Story 1. I once found out that not everyone has their anus in the same place. I am a nurse. My patient was constipated and needed a suppository to help her poop. Normally, you stick the suppository towards the bottom of their crack, slide it down and forward, and then pop it into the first hole that you come across. Almost all the time, that works perfectly. It does not work perfectly when the patient has their anus at the top of their butt crack. The patient then gets a suppository in their vagina that you have to get out. I've told that story to other nurses, and the ones that have done the job long enough often have their own abnormally high anus stories too. Story 2. When I was in 7th grade, my parents woke me up from bed and took me to the guest room, where they proceeded to show me what history on the computer was. Story 3. Punched my brother in the throat and crushed his windpipe. He was in the hospital for a while but was okay in the end. I honestly just took a blind, wild swing. I could just as easily have hit him in the chest. Story 4. Not me, but my town's mayor told an emergency medical technician to kill herself during the aftermath of a budget meeting, right in front of me. The regret that washed over his face when he realized it was still streaming to YouTube for the town to see was priceless. Story 5. I had spent the entire night running from police in the woods, and no matter how hard I tried, the police helicopter stayed above me. I figured the helicopter had some infrared camera that could see my body heat in the dark forest, so I found a body of water and got neck deep in it and stayed in the water for hours. When the sun came up, it got hot fast, and I discovered I was in the nastiest cesspool with things swimming and slithering around me. The police were never chasing me. I was tweaking on methamphetamine and hallucinating and found myself dehydrated and covered in filth, miles and miles from civilization, on the hottest day of the year, and it took me days to find my way out of there. That moment made me who I am today. Story 6. In my early 20s, I went to pick up a really heavy object with a coworker. Instead of waiting for him to grab it all the way, I just went for it. The thing shifted weirdly, and I tore the ligaments that connect your lower back to your butt. My back has never been the same. You think you're invincible in your early 20s, but you are not. Story 7. Mine's a bit gory, but with a half-happy ending. I lost my wife in 2020 to breast cancer. In 2023, our 6-year-old daughter died of lymphoma. I hit such horrific grief I only saw one way out. On Christmas Day of last year, alone and just whatever, I hung myself in my living room, but turns out I'm either weighing more than I think or terrible at tying nooses. A few seconds hanging, the rope ripped the plaster from the ceiling, and I crashed to the ground. This is obviously an utterly horrible and nasty memory, but as I lay on the floor, sobbing every few seconds, bits of plaster from the ceiling would just fall down and hit me, and all I could do was laugh. Everything is still absolutely disgusting, but when I think of that rain of plaster, I feel that mixture of laughter due to how ridiculous it must have looked, but also a massive, I've messed up moment. Anyway, that was a cheery story, as you were. Apologies if this answer alarmed anyone. Sometimes I kind of lose myself in my own thoughts and suddenly I'm getting emails saying I'm a red flag or someone's concerned. People have messaged asking questions or checking if I'm okay. So to keep it simple and only if you wish, please do follow me on Instagram Stu Clark. I've documented the bad, the really bad, and the laughable. The only reason I say this is I've found writing about it and posting have helped, and other people have come forward, and we've kind of formed a trauma team club where we all help each other. Anyway, thank you for the kind support and again, apologies. Story 8. Last night I blew my nose pretty hard and heard a super loud squeak followed by my hearing being all messed up. Hoped to sleep it off, but no luck. Went to the emergency room this morning, and yes, I tore a little hole in my eardrum. It's going to take a few weeks to heal. Great. Story 9. I once accidentally created an infinite network loop on my college campus network and crashed the entire school's internet. This was during my certification program as a Cisco-certified networking administrator. Story 10. After a delightful shower one evening, I decided to blow-dry my hair using the hairdryer that had some exposed wiring. It had always worked decently, so I figured no big deal, it's fine. Anyway, I got electrocuted and my hand got burned, but on the plus side, I got to see blue lightning go pinging up my arm. I no longer own a hairdryer. Story 11. Quitting my amazing dream job during a manic episode back in 2019, I got into a shouting argument with my boss. Anyway, I'm a couple of months into what would turn out to be 9 months of increasingly desperate unemployment when it finally hits me. What did I do? I still haven't recovered from that mistake. Bipolar postmania clarity can be truly heartbreaking. Wreckage everywhere, and no real sense of how it all happened. Story 12. I've done mushrooms before, but only about half an eighth to an eighth at a time. This time, I was offered some by someone and just took a handful without measuring. I want to say it was about 5 grams. At first, they didn't hit, and then mid-bite from a hot dog, I could no longer feel my mouth. The hot dog fell from my mouth to my shirt to the ground. When I looked up, it was over. The next 3 hours consisted of nothing short of psychological torture. I would not wish a bad trip on anyone. Story 13. While in college, I went to use my one-hitter at a red light before I pulled into my work parking lot. I lit it up, took a big drag, and looked to the left. There were 2 police officers staring right at me. My heart sank. Story 14. Ended up getting so angry in an argument that I smashed the windshield of a car with my fist. Proceeded to be ridiculed on the local crime reports online as a result, which was warranted. Story 15. Probably the time I got fired from my job. I did the one thing you shouldn't do when dealing with the public and called the guy on the other end of the phone an idiot. It was a virtual call center. He pushed all the right buttons, unfortunately, and looking back, I think he was one of those callers who was deliberately trying to wind me up. Story 16. I was having a full-blown panic attack about messages my ex-girlfriend had sent me while out partying. I was on the phone with my friend who was trying to calm me down, and he said, "Don't reply right now. Send me a screenshot of the messages, and we can walk through them, and I'll tell you what I think." I sent the screenshot right back to my ex. Story 17. When I woke up in the hospital to my mother, my aunt, and my grandma all standing above me, I knew I had messed up badly because my grandma and my mom hadn't spoken in over a decade, let alone willingly been in the same room together. I had totaled my truck and gotten airlifted to the hospital. Story 18. Not one moment in particular, but when I realized I had fully ostracized myself from 3 separate friend groups. Realizing that I just kept hurting people and pushing them away hurt badly. Story 19. My grandfather had passed away, and I inherited his record collection. While attempting to repair a record player, I was testing it and dropped his Johnny Cash Live at San Quentin album on my garage floor. I went inside and just lay on the floor and cried. Story 20. I looped the network and ended up costing about $100,000 in downtime. I was so tired, as I was migrating a data center and had several failures during the process. I was on about hour 39 of an 8-hour day and plugged a switch into a switch. Completely forgot about what I did. Took a couple of hours to find my mistake. Story 21. Finally coming to the realization of how much money I lost gambling, and more importantly, the girl of my dreams. I would give all that money, enough to buy a house, away all over again to get her back. Story 22. As an undergraduate in college, I was supposed to give a seminar talk in front of a group of graduate students and professors. I was nervous since it was my first time giving a talk like this, but fortunately, my postdoctoral mentor promised me he would be there. As it turned out, he did not show up because he wanted more time to prepare for his meeting afterward. So, after my talk ended, I got the meeting location from someone else, walked into his meeting, and disrupted it by yelling at him for 5 minutes straight. Then, I proceeded to sit down in the meeting room and stayed there for the rest of the meeting. The next week, I came clean to the professors who supervised us and admitted everything that happened. One professor had us talk it out and apologize to each other. The other professor took a walk with me and told me that people break their promises, and it's part of life, but both the postdoctoral mentor and I were good people, and he didn't want us getting into fights. I faced almost no consequences for this major mistake, but I was able to learn the correct lessons due to how my professors handled it. This made me appreciate how lucky I was with my professors. Had it been with anyone else, chances are I would have gotten fired. Story 23. My husband is an extremely patient man. His father was an abusive person, his mother was a drug addict, and we talked a lot about that. We were best friends before we were husbands. I playfully punched his arm a few times before he confided in me, and it really scared him when I did that. Obviously, I stopped. Unfortunately, I was also a drug addict for a long time, and he was there for most of it. He was willing to stick with me while I got clean through all the difficult times, as long as I actually stayed committed to it. Well, I relapsed once. Just once. Because when he looked at me, he knew I was coming down. He asked if I had more and came to take it from me, and I hit him right in the face. His expression deeply affected me. I don't remember much of that night, but that face haunts me. Of all the things I put him through, that's the one thing I'm never going to forgive myself for, even though he says he has. Story 24. At university on a night out, very drunk, I went into a dark corner for a pee. As I was peeing, I heard a cough and turned around to see two police officers standing there. I forgot to put myself away and stop peeing before I turned around. Story 25. One time I studied the wrong material for one of my midterms and ended up failing it. My professor was understandably confused when I admitted I didn't study the right parts. Story 26. The night after a girl I thought I loved told me she didn't love me, I decided to cheer myself up and revisit old memories. Then I thought about them a bit more. Over a 12-hour introspective week trip, I reevaluated everything I saw about myself and figured out a couple of things. That I was a piece of shit to a girl who loved me. And the only thing I can do now is respect her boundaries and stay away. The girl I was actually in love with is someone who I will never, ever see again. The girl who I thought I loved was, in fact, a bullet best left dodged. I am a bullet that she dodged as well. In one night, I had these 4 realizations. I have been trying to better myself ever since, but truth be told, it hasn't been going great. I still suck, but at least I know about it. Story 27. I had a paid-off house, land, cars, and a small equity line to renovate the kitchen. I had an excellent career and was doing well. I married a man 14 years older with several kids and 2 mortgages. We divorced after I raised all the kids, and I lost probably $500,000 in the process. It all came crashing down right after we moved into a house on my family property. I put his name on it because I'm stupid, and with COVID-19 and politics, he became alcoholic, abusive, and a conspiracy theorist all the time. It was just like, what did I do with my life? Story 28. I woke up on another night of a work trip. I had gotten completely wasted and had bruises all over me. I was distraught and incredibly hungover. To this day, I'm not sure how I got back to my room. I did not call my partner at the time and had several alcoholic blackouts throughout the past 2 years. When I woke up and realized I hadn't called the night prior, I just felt doomed. My partner gave me several chances, but that's when I hit rock bottom. When I said I'll never do it again, it'll never happen again. I swear you can't trust an alcoholic. I blacked out on the way home 4 days later. Thankful to be almost 3 years sober today. Story 29. After being blind to an abusive friend because I had a crush on him, I abandoned my current best friend to tend to that abusive friend's needs, while he manipulated me into thinking my best friend was a terrible person. After I had gotten out of that friendship, I sent a long message to my now ex-best friend about the situation, full of apologies and explanations. The response I got basically told me we would never be friends again due to my actions toward her. That was when I knew I had messed up big time. Story 30. I read a manifest incorrectly and pumped the wrong chemical down an oil well, which completely ruined a brand new well worth about $4 million. They had to abandon it. Story 31. I'm in high school and we're in the middle of a class. My phone vibrates. Text message received. I open the message. It's from my mom. Short and to the point. How could you do this again? I can't believe you're putting me through this over and over when I told you it's been really hard recently. Call me soon. You will pay for this. I had heart palpitations for the rest of the class. My best friend read the whole thing with me, and her eyes got bigger with fright too. We were brainstorming the whole class, trying to find a problematic thing I might have done behind my mom's back recently. I couldn't understand a single word of what our teacher said. The bell rang, the teacher left, and I ran towards the windows to find a quiet corner to call my mom. It rang and rang and rang. She wasn't picking up, and then she finally did. I asked, "Mom, what was that text? What did I do? What's the problem?" She said with a meaninglessly cheery voice, "I don't know. Did you do anything? I was just checking to see if you have. Have a good day at school, sweetie." And she hung up. Story 32. Marrying my late husband. Regretted it after the honeymoon, and he showed his darker side. He died 5 months later, and my life is better because of it, sadly. I wish he could have been mentally healthy because I really loved him. Story 33. Thinking I could be a doctor. I am now in my 3rd year of the program, feeling utterly lost and hopeless. I struggled from the start but kept pushing myself to keep going. I have missed out on so many family and friend events due to hours of studying. I do not have many hobbies anymore and feel like a shell of who I used to be. I am extremely depressed and feel incompetent. The only reason I have not quit is that school has put me $300,000 in debt, and there is no other career where I can make a salary high enough to pay it off.